Hi there. This is a video that gives you an overview of YouTube data tools. YouTube data tools is a collection of modules or scripts that allow researchers to extract data from kind of different sections of the YouTube platform, and then use that data to analyze practices, and also kind of study a little bit how YouTube and its algorithms work. Um, yeah, so in this video, I'm gonna just give you kind of a rough overview of some of the things you can do with these tools, and also some of the background information that hopefully helps um, you know uh, starting up with doing research on YouTube, or answer maybe some problems, or kind of point you into further directions. But before getting actually into the tools, I want to quickly talk about two things that I think are very important. The first one is, whenever you do this kind of data-driven analysis of social media, one of the things you really have to make sure is that you have a good understanding of the platform itself, right? So if you don't understand YouTube very well, you're gonna have a hard time doing any kind of research on it. And when I'm saying understanding YouTube well, I don't mean necessarily use knowledge. I don't mean that you have to really understand the culture of YouTube, although obviously that's very helpful as well to get started. But I think you have to have a pretty good grasp of how the platform is structured. Um, and in order to just give you a better idea what I mean by that, I'm going to quickly talk about what I consider to be the three main entities that structure, how YouTube content is collected, orchestrated, and so forth. So the first entity type is the channel, right? So channels are something that actually has, over the years, grown together and become more or less indistinguishable from users. So in the background, actually, both of these entities are basically the same. There are still some differences on the front end, but basically, whenever you're talking about a channel or a user, you're basically talking about something that from a technical perspective, from an organizational perspective, is really very similar. So this is just one out of many thousand of channels that exist on YouTube. And what you can see here, is that there's some basic interface, and then you start having some lists. So YouTube authors have several ways of kind of structuring what they want their channel to look like, and then they have a number of settings. They can, for example, uh, um, uh, display a particular video as an introductory video. Then they can make playlists and so forth. And this is indeed kind of the second main entity on YouTube. It's the playlist. So in a sense, a channel is actually a collection of playlists. And some of those playlists are really standard, so they are really provided by or default, right? They're really provided by the YouTube platform, and every channel that or every user that has a video uploaded actually has this playlist. And the most obvious here is the uploads playlist. So every channel has an uploads playlist, and this is really kind of uncurated, and all videos that are not hidden by privacy settings basically show up here. But then a channel can also kind of curate playlists by making thematic selections, or they have all kinds of possibilities. Um, so playlists, the second entity, And playlists, well, as I just said, are just a collection of videos, and indeed videos are the third type of entity, and of course, in a sense, well, actually the most important entity, since it's YouTube, so it's all about it's all about the videos. And one could say that, well, if a channel is a collection of playlists, well, then a playlist is a collection of videos. Um, but beyond the mere video itself, videos are also interesting in terms of providing access to a message board, and also kind of linking to other videos. So those are the three main types of entities: channels, playlists, and videos. And I'm going to come back to those three entities during this video a couple of times, because they're kind of important in terms of kind of starting with data extraction. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about before getting into a description of the tools themselves. The second thing I wanted to quickly talk about is the API. Quite simply because, click back here, the YouTube Data API is really relevant for YouTube data tools, because, well, it's the interface that I use to get all the data. And you don't really have to go into the guts of kind of those very technical things in order to do research on YouTube. But it's kind of helpful to familiarize yourself a little bit with that API, not so much in technical terms, but rather in terms of kind of what data is being made available. What you find in the documentation is, for example, descriptions of different fields. So if you don't know, what something means, the reference, which you can see here, is a really good place to read up. So in the reference, you see these lists of the basic API resources, and here you can already see some of those entities that I just talked about. So for example, this is the channels resource, and that basically provides access to all information on channels, and here you can see the different fields that the API makes available, and you get some explanations. So some of those elements, for example, statistics, channel statistics, will come back in the tools, and this is then a way of getting more information on what those different elements mean. I'm trying to link to the relevant sections of the API documentation in the interfaces of the different modules. It's not fully consistent yet, but when I have time, I'll make a pass over that to make it easier to find the relevant sections if you're interested. At the same time, the API documentation, while it's pretty good, and, well, what can I say? I mean, Google's V3 API is just awesome in general. It's really easy to work with, and that's why I was able to write those tools in a very short time span, because the API is really quite hassle-free, which is great for a developer. But at the same time, there are things that YouTube simply doesn't communicate, right, in any detail. So I just want to give you a quick example. It's kind of important. So if I go here to YouTube Data Tools, well, one of the modules, I'm going to talk about it more in a moment, is Video Network. And so the Video Network creates relationships, allows you to map the recommendations from one video to the next, and kind of transform that into a network that you can analyze. And I use this data element to grab those relationships, right? So it uses the search endpoint and then the related to video ID field, right? So what the script basically does is, well, you hand a video ID to the API, and then it basically gets recommendations, which are basically the kind of what's up next on the interface. But you know, here we have some information about what's happening, but we have no information how those relationships are actually created. So it's not like the documentation tells us we select related videos by using, I don't know, co-watching algorithms, or we use text similarity, or we use this or that. No, we don't get any of that information. And while you can use Google to maybe find out more about maybe some geek did some, or some researcher did some tests, how that works, but that is clearly not part of the of what Google communicates, and this is something we have to deal with, right? So what I always recommend is start with the documentation, then Google around. But in the end, in many cases, we have to accept that we're dealing with a black box. So it can still be very interesting to research, what kind of relationships YouTube actually puts to the front. But we have to accept that we can't get detailed information about some of the back end stuff, and well, that's just the way it is. At the same time, again, I recommend familiarizing yourself with the API. All right, so those were the two things I just wanted to get out of the way before looking into the tools themselves. Let's do that then. So YouTube Data Tools, it's really kind of a very simple collection of scripts. So it does quite a number of things, but it's in many ways just an interface that sits on top of the API, grabs some data, transforms it a little bit, either to create a network, or to structure it in a way that then is convenient to analyze. I mean, the principle I'm following in this kind of when I build those kind of tools is not to create full research tools, right? It would take way too much time, but to basically create outputs that you can then analyze, in things like Excel or in R, or in network visualization software like Gephi, which those tools are actually much more powerful than any kind of interface. I could build kind of quickly into those kind of tools. So it makes sense to be quite familiar with those analytics tools that you need in order to actually do anything with the data you get from here. All right, so for the moment, YouTube Data Tools has five modules. I may add more down the road, but for the moment it's five. Some of them are much smaller than others. Some of them a little bit more complicated. Some of them are very they get the data very quickly, while others you really have to you have to wait a long time if you make a big query. So they're not equivalent, but I think, or I hope, right, that each one of them is useful in their own way. I just want to kind of go through each one of those modules quickly, give you a bit of an overview, how it works, what you can do with it, and maybe help with some of the things that one has to take into account. So 5 modules. First one, channel info. Basically, well, it does what it says. It gives you information about the channels. Channel network allows you to see how channels relate to each other. Currently, only through the featured channels feature, but I may add more options to that later on. A video list, also kind of really simple. It basically just allows you to take different elements, for example a playlist, and just get a list of the videos in a kind of an Excel compatible format to understand if you want to, for example, analyze the content production of a particular channel. It's much more convenient to do it that way than copy and paste from the interface. Then video network, well, I've already talked about that before. It basically just allows you to map through the related videos features how different videos relate to each other. And the last one is video info and comments that really focuses on an individual video and then gives you, some information about that video itself, but also a way to analyze what's happening in the comment section, right? YouTube is a big commenting platform, and so that can be really, really interesting. All right, so the overview out of the way, let's look at the first module, channel info. And this is kind of the perfect occasion to talk a little bit about how you get what you need in order to work with YouTube data tools. YouTube data tools in nearly all of the modules starts with an ID, right? And actually, the three types of IDs it works with are exactly the three kinds of entities I talked about before, right? So YouTube data tools works with channel IDs, playlist IDs, and video IDs. So in order to get some information, basic information about a channel, you need a channel ID. And here I've kind of put an example for how you can find the channel ID. So in many cases, the channel ID is simply, so let's go back to test it here. Just do it. Is simply in the URL. So here you can see, okay, that this is the channel. I take the ID, and it's always this kind of strange upper lowercase code. Then I paste it in here. Well, I've already done it before. I submit the query, and then I get an output. In many cases, though, and this is a little bit this ambiguity between a channel and the user, you do not have the channel ID in the URL. So this, for example, is the Vsauce channel, and you can see the URL has a slightly different structure. Also here, the channel ID is nowhere to be found, but don't despair. It's still very, very easy to get the channel ID. You can just actually right-click. This is Firefox, but every browser basically has a way to look at the page source, which I'm doing here. The page source basically has all the HTML, the JavaScript, but it also has, you can see here, the RSS link, right? So if you command or Control F and look for RSS, you can find this URL here, and behold, the channel ID. So it's a little bit less convenient, but ultimately not that big of a hassle. So let's try this one out. Yeah, so here we got the Vsauce channel. So with the other IDs, it's normally more straightforward, right? So all of the other IDs, the video IDs and the playlist IDs, you can really find them, I think, always in the URL. If you can't, try to do something similar. Open the source code, look around. Does it say channel ID or a playlist ID somewhere, and you'll find it. So talking about this module now, channel info, it's like super basic. Kind of sorry, it's like a really lazy output. I'm going to make that a little bit nicer. It's a way of getting just some basic info for that channel. For example, down there, and this is what I showed you before, right? You get the channel statistics, view count, comment count, subscriber count, and so forth. You get some basic information about when the channel was founded. You get some links to thumbnails. You can also see whether there's a localization. You get indeed, and that's kind of interesting. You get the link to some of those standard playlists. So here it's the uploads playlist, but this channel also has chosen to make the likes playlist public, so you can see, for example, the videos that this channel has liked by using this playlist ID. So actually, one way of getting IDs for the other modules is actually to use the channel module. So yeah. Here you can also see the featured channel URLs, right? The featured channel URLs is what I'm using to create the network between channels. So this is the way it actually looks if you get the data from the API. Yeah, that's basically it. So it's really kind of basic, and well, I think the most simple module doesn't do that much, but can maybe be useful for some accessing some information more conveniently than clicking around through the YouTube interface. Oh, I'm just gonna grab a sip here. All right. And here you can see actually, so that's the link to the API API resource that this module uses. Okay, so channel network. Well, this is a more complicated module. Well, as I already said, YouTube allows channel owners to basically create lists of featured channels. This list isn't always called featured channels. So for example, Tested calls it Friends of Tested, but actually technically it's still the featured channels list that you actually just saw in the channel info module. So what this module does, it gives you basically two starting points, which in a sense is just two ways of creating seeds. Well, seeds in this case are the channels you want to start with, right? This can be a single channel, so I could say, yeah, here Tested, it has this list. I take Tested as a starting point, and then basically, grab those 6, and then the featured channels of those 6, and so forth. So this is how it works, right? It's a crawler that starts with one or several channels, and then gets the featured channels of those channels, then the featured channels of those channels, and so forth. So you can use this to actually map the full channel network on YouTube. If you have a lot of time, but you cannot use it beyond 2 crawl steps on the version I am hosting online. This would for our servers, this would simply be too much. So if you are not happy with having only a crawl depth of 2, and I'll explain in a moment exactly what that means, then by all means grab the source code of YouTube Data Tools. You can install it on your own server, or maybe your university server, and then you can do all the crawl depth you want, right? You can go into thousands and basically kill your machine that way. Yeah, crawl depth, it's really kind of the most important but it's a really a very relevant parameter here, because it basically says how far from the seeds should the script go. If you choose 0, what it basically does, it looks at the relationships between the seeds only, right? So let's say you have made a collection of 20 channels that you're interested in, and you want to see how do they feature each other. You basically just put the channel IDs here in this box, separate them with a comma, choose crawl depth 0, and then all you get is the relationships between those 20 channels. If you choose crawl depth 1, well, then what you will get is those 20 channels, then all of the channels that those 20 channels feature, and the relationship, all the relationships between all of those channels, right? So you'll still get the relationships between the seeds, but then also you get all of the relationships between the second onion ring around the seeds. And then 2 is just one step further, and in many cases this already gets you quite a number. If you start with a not that small number of seeds, already crawl depth 2 can go into thousands of channels. So what I always recommend is start small. Start with maybe crawl depth 1 and look what it gets you, and work iteratively. So the first starting point here that I talked about was indeed comma separated list of channel IDs. The first one is a little bit different. It's kind of interesting. So I'm very interested in. I gotta say, I'm in general kind of more interested in my own research in kind of how YouTube works as a technical platform, rather than what people are doing with or on YouTube. So, for example, looking into searching and search ranking is very interesting to me, and this is why I kind of also built in search as a starting point for quite a number of modules. So this starting point basically allows you to search, to use YouTube's search function to look for channels, and then use the list of channels you get back as seeds, right? So just an example. Let's search here for, I don't know, I like ecology. And then, here I get a list of, well, not only channels, but I can change that here, can say I only want, channels. And this is basically exactly what the module does, right? It gives you the ability here to put in a query. Then it works through iterations, so you can actually get up to 1,000 search results. It's 20 iterations of 50 items. Again, start small, and if you combine 20 iterations with crawl depth 2, you're gonna wait a long time probably, because that's gonna be big. Yeah, but it basically allows you to look a little bit. So if I'm a user and I want to learn about a subject, I use the search function, I get those results. It's kind of interesting, to say, well, so how does YouTube, for example, orchestrate access to a subject matter like ecology, or to a case like the Baltimore riots and so forth. So it really allows you to get a little bit that user perspective. What are users confronted with when they search for something on YouTube? You can also rank differently. That's kind of directly taken from the API. I also use Google's descriptions of those different ranking strategies. So in a sense, you can really kind of simulate, again here, this kind of sort by thing, and yeah, it gives you another option. The output file here is just going to be a GDF file, which is a very simple network file. It basically has just two components. It has a list of nodes and then a list of connections between the nodes. I put in some meta information for every node. So for example, for every channel you get the subscriber counts and those kind of things. I might add more in the future, but you basically open this file in Gephi, and then there are many Gephi tutorials online that you can use in order to see how to work with that tool. Other network analysis toolkits can read GDF files too. Yeah, so you don't have to use that one. Okay, channel network. Did I forget anything? No, I think that's basically it. So next up, the video list. In many ways, this is a simpler module. It's actually just a something that is supposed to help a little bit with some with research convenience basically. So it's a means to get to create lists of videos and some, again, meta information, statistics on videos. Is it HD? Is it SD? You can just run it and see what kind of options it gives you. It has more starting points because it can be kind of nice to get video lists for kind of different things, and that's what I've tried to implement here. So just to go over that very quickly, you have 4 options. If you use a channel ID, you basically just get the uploaded videos for that channel, right? So if I'm interested, for example, in studying, let's say, a collection of channels, and I would like to see, for example, well, how did the view count evolve over time? How did maybe the length of the videos change, and so forth. What's the frequency of posting? You can get all of that information by simply, copy and pasting from the YouTube interface itself. But of course, that's a really, really inconvenient. So here, what you just do is, you paste the channel ID, click Submit Query. At the end, you get a list of all of the uploads. Exact same thing for playlists. So you put in the playlist ID, you get all of the videos that are on that playlist, and you can then analyze it. Nothing much to add to the search query either. So this is actually kind of I think a nice way to to study again ranking. And here, it's again kind of just an interface on the search function. So I search for ecology again, but this time, instead of having the channel parameter set as a type, it has the video parameter set as a type. So what you basically get is just a list of the highest ranked videos that YouTube provides you, and again, you can select how many you want to get. So you can get up to 1,000 videos here. Again, if you want to use the source code, none of those limitations apply. You can just delete the lines, and then see how far the YouTube API will get you. Again, you can rank, so that's also kind of nice. By, for example, view count, or whatever. Yeah, and then again, you have the possibility to have a manual selection. So, for example, if you are yourself manually curating a list of videos you want to analyze, and then you have made a selection, you want to have them in one convenient Excel file, you paste in the video IDs, make sure they're comma separated, and again, you get the video list. Yeah, so that is really simple. I think the video network module, which the 4th module, is kind of one of the most fun, because it really allows you to look into those kind of content ecologies. Stop here. That YouTube creates through this. Well, now it's called Up Next section. It used to be called, I think, related videos, or suggested videos, right? And this module is basically a way to say, all right, we start with, again, a number of seeds, but this time the seeds are videos, right? And then see what YouTube suggests as similar or indeed related videos. Again, we don't really know how YouTube comes up with it, but ultimately, if you're interested simply in studying what users are actually seeing on screen, because this is ultimately what's relevant, right? What's relevant is that if for example I watch this video, then I get these suggestions. This can be really a means of kind of looking into those content ecologies that YouTube creates. The module works kind of really the same way as the channel module, but instead of instead of having the possibility to paste channel IDs, well, you can paste video IDs as seeds. So you have a collection of videos that you're interested in. You paste them in there, again, comma separated. You set the crawl depth, works exactly the same way. If you set it to 0, then you only see the relationships between the seeds, and then you select 1, you go out 1 step, select 2, go out another step. Yeah. Same thing here with search query. You just use a search query. For example, I want to see, for ecology, the first 50 videos, and then, what kind of video network then starts from there, I can use this feature here. Again, the output file is in GDF format, so you open it in Gephi. And what maybe I forgot when I talked about the channel network, and that also applies here, always treat this as a directed graph. So there are basically two types of networks, right? There are networks where the link has a direction, and there are networks where the link doesn't have a direction. So if I, for example, want to map, friendship relations on Facebook, they're always mutual, right? So in that case, the link doesn't have direction. So, and I shouldn't analytically then treat it that way. But here, both in the channel network and in the video network feature, there's actually directionality to the link. That means a channel can feature another channel, but that channel doesn't have to feature it back, right? That means if you open one of those network files in Gephi, select it as directed, right? Because there is direction in it, and that actually allows you, to analyze things a little bit differently, and it gives you, kind of an additional analytical element that can be quite significant. So yeah, again, just GDF format, open in Gephi, analyze. If you don't know how to use Gephi, watch a tutorial. Or spend an hour clicking around. That's actually probably one of the most useful things. So that's it for the video network. The last module, last but not least, because this is actually kind of a big one. It's actually in terms of programming, it's actually the one that took by far the most time. It took actually more time than all of the others together, and it deals with a single video, right? But it does a whole bunch of things with that video. You can actually see here in the interface, it gives you 4 different outputs. So it gives you some basic info and statistics about the video. I'm going to show you an output in a moment. Then it gives you a list with all of the, well, I call it here retrievable comments. And that is, again, one of those cases where, we don't really know. So I've done some tests, and in some cases, I was able to get, enormous amounts of comments. I think I tried out the Rick Astley, Stock Aitken Waterman, Rick Rolling video that has, a lot of comments. And I was able to basically get over 200,000 comments from that video. In other cases, you get a much lower percentage. I think it has to do with the age of the video. So older videos, you get more comments. Newer videos, you get less. But even for newer videos, I was able in some cases to get a lot of comments. So I gotta admit, I'm not really sure what determines the number of comments that you're able to extract. What's interesting is that the script gets both the top level comments and the replies, right? So that I think is interesting. It also it creates basically a very simple list of just, the usernames of the people who write comments. So you can just, see, for example, that user has commented, 10 times on this video. And this can be, for example, be interesting to, if you look into, you kind of study a smaller kind of community, and you analyze, let's say, 20, 30, 50 videos, you can then kind of compare those lists, and then you maybe, find these really active users, and thereby kind of understand a little bit better the community dynamics that develop around those videos. So it's very simple. The most complicated thing, and I have to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, is the interactions between users in the comment section. So this is kind of interesting, right? Because if you're familiar with YouTube, you know that comment sections can have kind of really different dynamics. So, for example, on the Rick Astley video that I just mentioned, people just don't reply to each other. It's just, somebody, rickrolled them, they got to the video, and then they say, "Ha, so funny," and that's all they do, right? So there's very little interaction. But then a lot of videos, especially that have, strongly divisive issues. So, whenever you look into, anything that has to do, with, I don't know, racism, sexism, the iPhone, all of those subjects that get YouTube boiling, and oh my God, boiling, it's such a cesspool sometimes. Well, there you will find many more interactions between users. So what this module tries is to create a network file that allows you to map those interactions. Can be kind of very interesting to indeed detect whether, in a comment section, you really have a conversation or a debate, or, well, I mean, to be honest, most of the time it's a shouting match. Or, whether it's simply, kind of declarations of, "Oh, Taylor Swift, I love you so much," or, those kind of things. And this is what allows you to do it. But this is really a little bit less straightforward. Not necessarily in terms of analysis. So again, you get a GDF format. It has all of the authors in it, and if they interact, there's again a directed link that is being laid. But it's not so straightforward because there is no fully unambiguous way to transform interactions into a data file. So in a sense, while all of the modules that I've talked about so far really are extremely close to the API, obviously, in all of those modules, I have made some decisions. I thought, that would be an interesting module, or those are the relevant data variables that the script should get. But in this module, I had to go a step further and really make a little bit of a commitment to how to interpret or how to formalize some of the things that become data. Because in the other modules, it's in many ways really the API that does the formalization for me. So I'm not really intervening all that much. To give you an example, so here we have a comment section. This is a top level comment here, MacLog, right? He has he wrote a top level comment, and the way the module creates interactions is around that structure. So what we can see is that this person, Francis Watts, is directly addressing MacLog, right? And this means that in the script, what's going to happen? It's going to create a link from Francis Watts to MacLog, right? Now the problem is the second comment. Look at this one. This doesn't have this kind of formalized shout out of the user. So is this now a reply to MacLog, or is it a reply to Francis Watts? Well, we can look at the comment and make an interpretation, but and we can see, for example, most corrupt cops in the industrialized world, most corrupt cops, could be either. So what I'm doing in the script is I'm basically saying, because I have to make a choice, right? I cannot say, that if there is no direct shout out, I still have to, formalize it in a way. So what I did, and this is really important to understand when you analyze it, I consider a post that is a reply that doesn't directly, kind of shout out to another user as a reply to the top level comment. So this comment here will make a link to this user, right? So there is going to be a link between Davido's 17able and MacLog, right? In some cases, however, this may not be the right interpretation, because in some cases, actually, it may be really obvious that this user is replying to actually this comment. So this is a compromise that I had to do. Keep it in mind when interpreting. Fortunately, in many cases, you don't have to do it, because you can see, for example, here, Maclog is actually replying to this user, and then it creates a link from Maclog to fix protocol, and that's really straightforward. But for example, here, true, true in terms of the top level comment, or true in terms of the last comment here. We don't know, but in the script, it's if it's ambiguous, it's always to the top level comment. Yeah. So this is the last module, and I just quickly want to show you the output of that module, because it's I think a bit interesting. And one of the things to take into account here is that you have this small checkbox, right? So it's kind of obvious how the thing works. You put in the video ID, but the HTML output basically decides whether the data is only put into files that are then available for download, or whether the output of the module should also be shown as a in the browser directly. So I recommend kind of using the HTML output whenever, because it's a nice way to get a quick overview. But the reason why I added the checkbox is that in some cases you may have so many comments that your browser simply gets blocked, because it can't handle the HTML anymore. In this case, don't select HTML output. So this is how the processing looks like once it's finished. I'm basically just giving those counters in the interface, so you see that something's happening, and things are advancing. We can see that here for this video, which is about Edward Snowden being invited in John Oliver's show, and here you see there were 1,409 top-level comments that were retrieved, and from those top-level comments, about 400 additional, or on those top-level comments, about 400 additional replies were made. So actually, most of the comments are just kind of those one-liners, and then you have a couple of replies in there. Then you have the 4 files. You can just download them. Right-click, save as. And I just want to quickly point to a couple of interesting things here, right? So this is the output for the basic, video information. What you can see up here, basic information, statistics about the video. And here, you get, when it's published. I always add the Unix time here. It can really help with the analysis. The title of the video, and some description, the channel ID, the channel title. The duration, 33 minutes, 15 seconds. Dimension, definition, whether it has captions. And this is actually the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because this is really interesting. So if you create a video, you can, prohibit or kind of, govern the way it's shown in different content regions. And actually, you can do 2 things, right? You have like a kind of an opt-in, opt-out system, right? You can either say it's allowed in, let's say, only the US, and that means then that all other locales cannot access the file without a VPN, right? So YouTube uses IP addresses to geolocate you, and then show content or don't show content. Or the content creators can decide to block it explicitly in certain regions, and then all of the others have access. It's kind of interesting, because in that case, you have 4 locales, and this is Great Britain, Jersey, which is an island in the Channel, Australia, and the Isle of Man, right, which is also an island. And this is kind of interesting because these locales are basically places, where the John Oliver Show, it's English language, probably thinks about monetizing differently. So maybe it's in those channels, it's maybe syndicated, with the BBC or whatever UK channel you can think about. So they want to make sure that the people in the UK watch that content through the syndicated channel and not on YouTube. Yeah, and then you have some other basic things. Second kind of output is simply the comment counter. So per author, so we have a user Rockerchev nerd emo. Okay, that's funny. So witty. That commented 15 times on this video. So it can be a way of well, you obviously get kind of a long tail distribution here. Most users just once. And then you get the full comments, right? And I've tried to make this a little bit readable by basically making replies gray. So this is a reply to this one, and you see it's just only one reply, and here we have a conversation between those different users. All right. Yeah, so this I think was the last module. I also encourage you to, if you have an issue, to look at the FAQ. As it states here, I simply can't provide assistance for the tools that I program. You know, read the documentation. Try to Google certain things. I'm sorry, I would like to help everybody, but this is simply not possible. If you find a bug, I really appreciate sending bug reports to tools@policies.net. But please do look into how to make a good bug report. I try to basically have some information down there. A good bug report is like really very very useful. But if you write it doesn't work, first of all I'm going to ignore your message, and secondly I couldn't even do anything with it. Yeah, so that's important. Maybe the last thing to say is take your time when working with these kind of things. Some things may buggy, some things maybe kind of a bit difficult to do. So this is software made for academic research, right? So that means it requires some independence on your part, and the further you get into data analysis as such, the easier those things become, right? So before you do any kind of analysis on, for example, a video network or a channel network, familiarize yourself with Gephi. Be sure that you understand how it works, right? If you don't know how to work with a tabular file, look at an Excel tutorial, or there are other tools out there that are really great. If of course you have some technical inclinations, the language to learn is R. That really gives you all that you can hope for. Again, you have the source code available on GitHub. Okay, the link is here somewhere. So if there's some limitations that you're not happy with, you can just download the source code. Remove the limitations, or add something that you think is important. In that case, I would like to ask you to get back to me, or if, for example, you have a feature idea, or you think this is something that would make the tool better, or if you want to contribute a new module, shout me a mail at tools@policies.net, and I will really take it into consideration. Yeah, so that's it for the YouTube data tools. I hope you enjoyed, and have fun analyzing data. Cheers.